I used to think there was nothing that I like more than seeing Jon Jones's credit taken from him. Like, I would think that about myself, that there's nothing that seems to give me a tickle more than when somebody takes the great body of work that is Jon Jones's career and can find a way to spin it. And there's not many people that can. I, as the only person to defeat Jon Jones, I ripped his toe off and threw it in the second row. And you should have seen the kids. They were screaming. They were horrified. But that's what it's like to face me, right? See what I'm saying? Not a lot of people can do that. And I truly would get my biggest charge when somebody would take some great work of Jon and find some way to spin it. It was just interesting to me. And you want to know something? For some reason, it turns out I actually get a charge when somebody gives Jon credit. And this just happened. And I'm wondering about myself. Going, hey, what's this new soft? What's this thing about? Guys, do you know how infrequent it is? Do you know how incredibly infrequently somebody comes out and speaks up for Jon? Cain Velasquez wasn't even defending him. I mean, Cain lost to him multiple times. Twice with Daniel Cormier. Was that their only two? But Cain's right there on the corner. I mean, he's trying to beat him. He's studying him. He's breaking him down. He's going to practice every day. He's emulating. He's doing whatever you can to get into Daniel's head about beating Jon. And he lost twice. But instead of having sour grapes, Cain, speaking with Helwani, predicting Jones and Aspinall, Cain took Jones. Now, that is the first person, former athlete, from the locker room that has taken Jon. And era is very tough, and you guys will know this too. You had them when you were an 8th grader, you were a freshman, and they were a junior or senior in high school, but these guys you looked up to. And then when you got to their spot, you still held them in a higher regard. Now, history says the new and younger crop is better than those that came before us. Like, history very clearly says, to a 99.99% ratio, that new and current is better than past, but we will always hold the past in a higher regard than we do the current. Now, the reason I say it like that is if anybody's got the right to an opinion, it's Cain freaking Velasquez. But it's an opinion of a human being. And could it be? Could it be that he clings to an era? It was a pretty in-depth breakdown and analysis by Cain. Look, let's start with Tom. This is Cain talking. Let's start with Tom. Tom has patterns. As fighters, we all have patterns. I have patterns. Everyone has patterns. It is up to the opponent and the opponent's team to study and find those patterns. And then he talked about Tom and how when Tom comes in, says sometimes he lunges, sometimes he jumps, sometimes he slides in. Cain talked about the fact that Tom can be very fluid, he can be very technical, he can also brawl. I mean, it was a good breakdown. It was very accurate. Cain just said, but he has patterns. He didn't say what those were. He said he has patterns. And if you were to take that and put that against Jon, Cain credited Jon as being the highest IQ'd, most intellectual fighter in the history of the sport. Talked about Jon Jones, like everybody, can break a fighter down and sit there and watch tapes, but Jon is a student. Jon will watch it over and over and over because he's looking for a pattern. And if he doesn't find the pattern, then he knows he missed it, he rewinds it, and he watches it again. This is Cain talking. And there was something about it that was very nice to see Jon get a little bit of due, quite frankly. Not to mention it being from Cain. Right, we're all pulling for Cain right now. Everything that he's going through, and he took some time out and he went over and did that. But Cain is not also just a guy that fought at the same time. That was the potential opponent. I mean, when Cain Velasquez was here and Cain was on fire, the talk of Jon Jones going to heavyweight did not exist. In fact, it was pretty clear If Jon would like to stay champion, stay at 205 pounds. And you're great and you're a great champion, but you're not him. And that really was a belief. Cain was just too forward, too aggressive, and too big. I do believe that to be true. But does Cain believe that to be true? I mean, that would be very fascinating. That would be very fascinating to hear about that. There's a fight. Most of you won't know what happened, and those of you that did know what happened have forgotten. It didn't mean anything to you. It is one of the most pivotal and important fights we have ever had at heavyweight. I'm stalling here so you can try to guess. Do you know what it was? It wasn't a title fight, but it was a main event. It wasn't on pay-per-view, but it did end out the night. What fight am I talking about? It is one of the most important fights to ever have happened. When you're talking about lineage. Francis Ngannou versus Cain Velasquez. That was not even a pay-per-view. Are you ready for that? Could you imagine knowing what you know now about Francis and you're going to put him in there with Cain? Can you even imagine how big that fight is? But that's why it's so important, because it did happen. And you did have a shift in lineage. Right then and there. You had a shift in lineage. And there are common opponents. Stipe Miocic is a common opponent. Stipe did plenty of things to Francis. He had plenty of things done to him by Francis. One thing that did not happen is Stipe did not lose every round and every minute and every position of the fight. So it does make you wonder just how far, right? How far can you go with Jon Jones? Because we're not going to know, guys. One thing that's going to end, and we can either accept it today or we can argue about it tomorrow. But we're never going to know how good Jon Jones is, was, or could have been. We're never going to know. His career, for sure, will end without him showing us that. Without him entering a big tournament, for example. Or taking on a busy schedule and taking on 4 guys in 15 months. Max Holloway style, like that just isn't in the cards. And it is interesting, and I love to hear what Cain said. And I found out something about myself, and I still don't know why. But I like that Jon was given credit for that, and for the successes he had, and for what he did well, and that for the first time ever, somebody's spoken up and said, Jon can go with Tom. I have never even heard that. Everyone said Tom will crush him. Tom will go right through him. Jon will never do the fight. It's over in 1 minute. The first time Tom touches him. I keep hearing these things. I'm going, guys, could it be? Could that even be true, what you're describing? Could that even be true for a human being to be able to do that with somebody at this level? And finally, somebody, and his name's Cain Velasquez, spoke up and said no.